Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Here, I would like to tell you or maybe talk about sociopragmatics, the rules and the definition based on Jonathan Culpeper with the related article by Troy McKennicky, Autopragmatics as Intercultural Pragmatics, probing sociopragmatic aspect of pragmatics awareness. I hope you can gain many things from my explanation today. Please check this out. Okay, so the first thing is what is social pragmatics? So, social pragmatics is the study of how social factors and context influence the use and interpretation of language in communication. So, social pragmatics is a branch of pragmatics that studies the relationship between language and social factors. It focuses on how social norms influence the way people speak and understand meaning. For example, there is a simple example of social pragmatics. So the first phrase is close the door. It sounds normal if a teacher say a teacher says to the student, but it could be sounds rude if a student say it to the teacher. So uh, the point is, some sentence could be different social meaning. In other words, sociopragmatics recognize that the meaning of language is influenced by social relationship and context. Next, we are going to talk about early foundations of sociopragmatics. So, sociopragmatics developed from four aspects. There are pragmatics, sociolinguistics, sociology, and anthropology. Pragmatics studies meaning in context. Sociolinguistics studies the relationship between language and society. Sociology studies social structures and interpersonal relationships. Meanwhile, anthropology studies about human culture. And there are important scholars who studies about social pragmatics. The first one is J.L. Austin, who developed about speech act theory, and then Geoffrey Leach and Ginny Thomas. Um, They helped explain that language use is always related to social norms and communicative situations. Now we are going to discuss about Austin's contribution. Austin's is a person who developed about speech act theory. Austin said that language is not only used to say things but also to do things. For example, I apologize. I promise. I pronounce you husband and wife. So, however, Austin emphasized that speech acts do not automatically succeed. They must meet certain social and contextual conditions, which he called felicity conditions. This means that the speaker must have the appropriate authority, the situation must be suitable, and the participants must recognize the act. So, the important point is that a speech act is successful only in the correct social context. For example, like the phrase, I pronounce you husband and wife. So it's only valid if spoken by an authorized person, such as a marriage official or a priest. A random person like us cannot say that. Or yeah. From this, we can see that social context and social roles are crucial in social pragmatics. So how about I apologize and I promise? So if we say that, we have to know that the listener are understand that we seriously apology to him or to her because we made mistake, for example, and the listener also understand that, oh yeah, we make mistakes, so we do apology like that. Some if about the pronunciation in the wedding, like I pronounce you husband and wife, it could be happen and it could be clear enough if uh, it's spoken by a priest like that. Now we will talk about Leach and Thomas. Geoffrey Leach and Jenny Thomas distinguish between pragmatics and socio-pragmatics. And so there are three differences between linguistic or pragmatics with socio-pragmatics. The first one is if pragmatic linguistics focuses on linguistic forms, meanwhile socio-pragmatics focuses on social meaning. And then pragmatic linguistic focuses grammar and strategies, And sociopragmatics focuses social norms and appropriateness. And then pragmalinguistics, how the sentence said, and if sociopragmatics, when the sentence appropriate. Okay, so for example, could you open the window? Pragmalinguistics focuses on the linguistic researches or strategies that speakers use to convey meaning. In other words, it studies how something is said. For example, requests can be expressed directly, open the window, or indirectly, could you open the window? The second form is generally considered more polite because it uses a conventional politeness strategy. So, if in pragmalinguistics, it is linguistically polite, but may still sound inappropriate depending on context in sociopragmatics. If in sociopragmatics, so if in sociopragmatics, we can consider when we say that sentence. For example, the sentence "Could you open the window?" is grammatically polite, right? But it may still be inappropriate if it is formality. If it is used in a formal meeting with high-ranking official, where a different level of formality is expected. So, if we in a formal meeting or formal class, we we can't say to our lecturer or maybe our boss with that sentence, even though that sentence is polite, right? If we want to say that kind of sentence to our lecturer or our boss, we can say or we can use the more polite sentence. For example, "Excuse me, sir, would it be possible to open the window?" Like that. So in social pragmatics, context is the most important factor. Okay, next we move to social pragmatics and context. We can say that it is like the previous example, but we will focus talk about the context. So, context is the key in social pragmatics because social pragmatics studies about who speaks, to whom, where, when, social relationship, and the cultural background. The important concept is meaning change based on the context. For example, the sentence of the phrase "come here." If a parent says this to their children, it is normal. But if an employee says this to their boss in a commanding tone, it could be considered rude, right? In other words, social pragmatics helps us understand how context determines the social meaning of an utterance. You got the point? Now we move to the three main anchors of social pragmatics. There are social, interactional, and normative. The first is the social aspect. Language is related to identity, power, culture, and social relationships. And interactional aspect, meaning is formed through interaction between speakers, not just from the words themselves. And the last is normative aspects. Society has norms of evaluating whether a statement is considered polite, rude, appropriate, or inappropriate. These three aspects are interconnected in everyday communication. Now we move to the journal article, which is related with my part, which is the sociopragmatics, the roots and the definition. So I found the article from which written by Troy McConaughey in 2019. L2 pragmatics as intercultural pragmatics, probing sociopragmatic aspect of pragmatic awareness. How is McConaughey's article related to this chapter? So the main topic is how L2 learners' pragmatic awareness needs to be expanded from mere study of pragmalinguistic norms to an intercultural and multilingual understanding of sociopragmatics. Relevance to chapter 2 of Culpeper, this article directly applies the framework for distinguishing between pragmalinguistics and sociopragmatics that forms the core of chapter 2, while also critiquing the traditional perspective or interlanguage pragmatics that overemphasizes norm pragmalinguistic and neglects the sociopragmatics dimension. So if we compare the two, it is clear that Mechanici uses the same framework as Culpeper, namely the distinction between pragmatic and sociopragmatics proposed by Leach and Thomas. The difference is that Mechanici argues that language teaching research has thus far focused too much on pragmatics and neglect the sociopragmatics dimension, which is actually more complex. So now we will talk about what Konecki expands to the framework and its implication. The frameworks that are sociopragmatic norms are not static conventions. They are embedded in morally change interpersonal evolution, like polite or impolite, and friendly or strange. Context is not a mechanical determinant of language choice, but it's culturally and ideologically constructed by speakers. Example: the choice between sumimasen and arigato gozaimasu in a Japanese language class reflects cultural hierarchical values, or kidukai, not merely a function mapping. And now about the implication for language teaching. Pragmatics competence must be developed in a balanced manner across both dimensions, pragmalinguistic and sociopragmatics. Metapragmatics reflection in the classroom is a crucial bridge for building sociopragmatics awareness. Learners need to be made aware that their understand about the L2 and often the cultural. So now we can see that there are three common ground for each from Kalpapur and the Konakis. So yeah, from those three differences, we can say that Mikaniki expands on Kalpapur's framework by arguing that sociopragmatics cannot be taught as a set of binary right or wrong rules. It involves moral values and cultural assumptions that learners are often unaware of. Consequently, language teachers need to be encouraged metapragmatic reflection in the classroom so that learners realize that their assessment of the L2 is heavily influenced by their own cultural background. Now we on the conclusion. So sociopragmatics is not merely a branch of pragmatics. It is a way of understanding language as a social and cultural practice that cannot be separated from the context, values, and assumption of its speakers. From Culpepper's framework and mechanics, empirical findings both emphasize that same point. True language competence requires sociopragmatic awareness, not merely mastery of linguistic forms. So both Culpeper and McConney emphasize the same point. Sociopragmatic is at the heart of true language proficiency. Understanding language is not just about mastering linguistic forms, but also about understanding the values, context, and cultural that underlie every language choice we make. Yeah, I think that's all from me.